welcome back to another episode of the Piano Pedagogy Podcast. My name is Jacqueline and I'm the owner of High Desert Piano and Defined Music Teacher. With me, as always, is Arianne, who owns Whittier Family Music School in Southern California. We are excited to have Marie Lee with us today. Marie Lee is the creator of the popular group Teaching Blueprint, co-producer of the Group Illuminated online conference, and the owner of Musicality Schools in Las Vegas. Not only does Marie maintain a group studio of 140 students and mentor other music teachers, she presents at conferences including MTNA, NCKP, Music Ed Connect, 88 Creative Keys, and other state music teacher conferences. On top of all that, she's also the current Nevada Music Teachers Association president. Where do you find all the time for that, Marie?
I don't. And I knew you were going to ask that. I don't have a good answer for you because I think, like most music teachers, we are so involved in creating better communities, creating exciting lesson plans for our students, and being involved as business owners that there's always a good, better, best. So, pick the best things that need to get done, focus your time there, and you're going to always have things to do. So if you think I've got it together, I don't. Just focus on what I can do that can make the most impact and keep moving, keep checklists, lots of checklists.
Good, better, best. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. So our topic, let's just dive right into our topic. Reason we connect is I saw that you had a post online about a crash course you do for parents of your piano students. And from there, we got to discussing student retention, which is going to be the focus of our discussion today. So why should teachers care about student retention? It seems like a silly question, but we know that it's more cost effective to keep a student than to replace them with a new one.
Absolutely. And before we jump into this, I'm just going to throw a plug here for group opportunities, because we'll talk about that a lot through this podcast today. And I am a group only teacher. There are ways, though, as a private teacher, to bring group opportunities into your studio. You don't need to convert totally to group like what I've done, but what we'll talk about today is retention. And I really believe that at the heart of retention is involving the group and getting students to have community building experiences where they're together. But we all know as business owners how much time it takes to onboard a new student. You've got all those conversations via email, phone calls as parents are researching, are we a good fit? Come in for a trial class, that type of thing. Yes, they want to take lessons from you, and then the onboarding to get, invoices ready to go, get their music books, their lesson notebooks, all of that takes time. And if we're building studios, those of us that are still trying to bring in students into our studios, then we're spending extra time and money marketing and replying to social media posts and trying to get people in the doors to our studio. So all of that takes time. Once you've got an awesome piano family that gets into your studio, we want to hold on to them because our time is money. And also we've already trained them. We've trained the parents how to practice with their child at home, what our expectations are. Here's our curriculum. And here are all the events that we have going on too. And once you do all of that training with parents and students, they're pretty set to keep going on their own. I mean, of course, we want to still nurture, and we're going to talk about that today as well, continuing to nurture, but we don't have all of the time and money that it takes to bring a student in. So of course, the less time we can spend onboarding new students, the more time we can spend on nurturing those ones that we already have in our studio. And build the studios, let's face it, those are the students that we want in our studios, because it makes teaching exciting and fun for us as well, because we're all about making things meaningful, but it's important to us that we have job satisfaction, which we already do, but let's create it in a way where we can focus on those students that are already in our studios.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really well said, because when you're a brand new music teacher, and you have, you're churning through students so often at that early stage. And I think it's so rewarding to move from that point where, you have just all of these new faces, on a weekly, monthly basis that don't necessarily stick around for very long. And then, you shift gradually over time, and then you realize, oh, wow, I've seen these people for 6 years. I've seen these people for 5 years. Most of my students have been with me for more than a year. And that's such a rewarding experience. And like you said, there's so much less to do because they already know how to practice. They have a good instrument. They're on time. They know your policies, all of that stuff. I think that is absolutely, a great point. Plus, if you are wondering as a teacher, how do I get to that max point, right? There's a formula where you multiply the number of months you keep a student on average by the number of new students you get on a month on average, and that's your high point. So if you get 3 students, you keep them for 8 months, you're probably going to peak around 24. So we want to get that number of months that they stick around as high as possible.
Right. I know. And then you can and there's nothing wrong with running a business. I don't particularly like that stuff, the business side. I would rather be teaching. So for me, if I can retain a student longer, I get to focus on the fun stuff that I want to teach and the curriculum and the technique. And we can really get into that rather than, have you paid your invoice? Oh, have you practiced, that type of thing, which is
right.
I can't say it's particularly fun for me either. So.
Absolutely. So you have a whole range of strategies about retention, increasing student retention. And as you mentioned earlier, you said a lot of that has to do with the group nature of your studio and that community. So do you want to dive into all of those topics?
Yeah, we could do that. Just jump in where you've got questions too. Because I have presented on this at MTNA, because this really, like I mentioned before, you don't have to be a group teacher to incorporate these type of activities. You're going to have to get a little creative as a private studio to make those opportunities happen, but they are possible. I've read this before. This was not my quote at all, but somebody said that we piano teachers can learn a lot from marching bands, because if you look at, and they call themselves marching band geeks, and if you look at these kids that do marching band, they stick with it for, the 4 years in high school. And why is that? It's not because of the instrument. It really isn't. It's because they're making friends. This is their circle of friends. This is a team that they compete with. And they're working toward one, like all of them working toward this one amazing goal. And so I think if we can look at that example as music teachers, how do I incorporate those kind of experiences? How can I bring that marching band, that team, dance team? My daughter was on a dance team, and they're 30 years old. They're still friends. How do we bring that team atmosphere, that team feeling, that feeling of, I don't want to give this up. This is my circle of friends. How do we bring that into our studios? And I think it is really by offering those community building events, opportunities in your studio, just because we all want to belong, even as adults, we want to belong to something special. And that's something that we can offer piano students. Remember, piano is kind of a solitary instrument. The child, most of you, the child comes in, it's you and the student, and we're fun. Let's face it, we're fun teachers, but we're not peers. And right. So if we can get them in with their friends and their peers, and they feel like they belong to something, they feel valued of what they're doing. Learning an instrument is valuable, and it offers something more than just that weekly time coming in and leaving and going home and practicing too. On a side note, just as an example, I had a group of high school senior. They happen to be all girls. I don't group my classes boys, girls, but I had 4 girls last year graduating from high school, and they were at the top of their class, like valedictorian, salutatorian, doing amazing things in their schools and getting scholarships and all this. And I said, what do you want to do with piano? Do you want to go private? And they're like, oh no, absolutely not. We want to stay with our group. And then they basically said, we don't have a lot of time to practice, we agreed. There's not a lot of time to practice, but they're like, don't cancel our class. Let us come. We want to stay with each other. And so they would come, and it was an agreement. Their parents were fine with it. They would come once a week, and we would play ensembles. And there was still learning going on, but they did not want to give up their team. They've been together for 11 years, and this was their team. They didn't want to give that up. And they're all scattered all over the nation right now in different schools, but they stay in touch. And so that is just the power of a group when they have those friendships. So they're building those friendships. So let's talk about some strategy. I mean, let's just talk about some community, the ways of building community, or just offering events where you can bring kids together in your studios. And feel free to adapt these to however it fits in your studio, or throw it out. But here's a few ideas. So I offer a lot of performance opportunities in our school. So a lot of chances for kids to get together and perform. So I know when I was growing up, it was an end of the year recital, and that's all we did. And that's traditional, and that's a nice thing. But, how about some performances maybe at a senior home? How about a once a month performance class where kids get together and play for each other? You do some theory games. I know a lot of teachers that do that, but where they're still performing, but it's in a low key environment just for each other. So performance classes. We get involved with our MTNA. So here's a plug for MTNA, but our local association offers a lot of opportunities. They do like a play-a-thon down at the mall for the holidays. They used to do like a Halloween recital, a Sonatina festival. Just get involved with your local association and see what they offer. Maybe your local music store offers some things, or they would be willing to, open up their concert hall for a Halloween recital where kids could get together, even from other studios, not just your studio, but bringing in kids from other studios as well to participate in that. My studio also participates in the National Federation of Music Clubs Solo and Ensemble Festival. And I can send you links. We can post those in the blog. But this is a national program. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's not competitive. It's a festival. But students, there's like I said, there's a solo and ensemble. But even solo festival gets the kids to get in front of judges, and they play for ratings and feedback. That they can get to meet other kids at that festival. Ensemble festival is a lot of fun because they are teams on stage performing, 5 grand pianos, and performing for a big audience in a theater, which is a lot of fun. And they get to see other students from other studios participate in that. The nice thing about Federation, I think, is because students are working toward gold cups. And so if they receive a superior rating from the judges, they receive 5 points. But in order to get their first gold cup, they have to earn 15 points. So automatically there's 3 years that you're hoping they stick with your studio because they want that trophy. And so there's kind of automatic retention built in because you've got something they're working toward them. Because I kind of like to compare it to like karate belts and martial arts. Right. Yeah, you're giving them some place to go. What's next? What's next? What do I want to be involved in next? Not rather than just, oh, here's what we do. We do a spring recital and that's it. But what can you give me? A lot of kids are hungry for, what's next and what can I work toward? And that validates you as a teacher when you have something like this that's outside of your studio. I really think that brings value to your studio when you're involved in outside events with, like, say, your local music teachers association or the Federation too. I don't know if you are familiar with the 30-piece challenge. Is that familiar? Anybody?
Yeah, I think this is something that we've heard. Haven't you done this, Arianne? The piece challenge?
Honestly, can't say I have, but it sounds interesting. What is it about?
Okay, I can link to this one too. This is not my idea either too. It's just something that I saw on, I believe this is on Wendy Stevens' site, Compose Create. So it's something that she's come up with. It's basically tracking pieces that your student plays really well and keeping them on a sheet. We do this for a whole year. So I'll do like June 1st to May 31st. And it's 30 pieces. There's also a 40-piece challenge, but tracking the pieces that students in my studio, I say it doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be pretty darn good. It needs to be something that you would play for your friends and not be embarrassed about, not your family, because your family loves you no matter what you play. So your peers would enjoy this and you would not be embarrassed to play this. So we're tracking repertoire, actually, and I, on the side note, if my parents, because I'm in a group, if my parents want to know how their child is doing, I'll be like, hey, check their 30-piece challenge sheet. Let's see how they're doing. How many pieces have they passed out? That means they're practicing. That means they're progressing in classes too. But I offer a trophy if my students have 30 pieces in a year that they can pass off, they can play really well. And I just recently started doing kind of interim prizes at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, so smaller prizes just to keep the interest in there. Because 30 pieces, that
Right.
is it's a lot of music, especially for little ones. And they have to work from the very beginning. This isn't something they can decide May 1st that they're going to learn 30 pieces and pass them off by May 31st. It is something that they have to work on the entire year to be
Can
able
we
to
back
do
up
that.
for a moment, Marie?
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to back up when we were talking about the community, and you were talking about the group opportunities and then the performance classes.
Yeah.
And I wanted to briefly talk about how, you mentioned that piano is so lonely, right? And I think that it has the opportunity to be so lonely, and that's so sad because for me, I didn't make a friend that played the piano, another pianist friend, until college, right?
Wow.
Which is really sad because it's the only musical instrument where that really is a reality because of classical training and how solo repertoire is so emphasized compared to band, orchestra, choir, just jamming with your friends. And I was curious if the performance opportunities are something that you have a stable schedule for, or are you like this, is it every May that you do, like you go to a nursing home, or is this something that it's pretty dynamic and changing in your studio?
That's a great question. Because I do like to, as things pop up, I'm not one of those that I do schedule for the year. Let me back up. I schedule for the year because there are set events in our local music teachers association that I know are happening year after year. They're pretty consistent. But if something pops up, Jacqueline, I'm all over it. Let's go play oh my gosh, was it 2 years ago? Anyway, the breakout of the Ukraine war, and my students were talking about it. And like, what could we do for these people? And so we decided we're going to have a concert and we're going to do like a playathon, and we're going to raise money for the World Food Kitchen that was these food trucks over in the Ukraine. I just forgot his name, but I can link to this anyway. He's actually from Las Vegas. He's got a cool restaurant in Vegas and Spain. But the kids are like, we got to do something for these people. How do we help these people? It's like, this is what we do. We're going to do a play for Ukraine. We did a concert. We did a sight reading challenge and did yellow and blue strips and big chains as they were passing off, playing pieces, sight reading pieces. And so that was one of those things that was dynamic, Jacqueline. So we could bring that one in and do that as well. But like set performances, I know that my Music Teachers Association always has their playathon at the mall in December, always early December. I know that solo festivals in March. I know the ensemble festivals in October. We have a Sonatina festival in February. And then the nursing homes, the senior tours, we're finally getting back into that because we couldn't do that with COVID for quite a while. And so what I do, we call it actually our Bringing Smiles tour. So we're taking the kids on tour. We're bringing smiles, and we go during the summer because the nursing homes are filled to the brim with performances in December. They've got plenty of that, but nobody comes in summer. And summer is also a time where things are a little low key. It's like there's no competitions, no festivals going on. And that's also, I'll just plug this one. This is also a way that I can keep my kids during the summer playing, is so they can do those performances. And that one's really meaningful because they're going in and they're doing something for somebody that can't get out and see, a musical performance. They're sharing their gifts. When we go in and do those nursing home tours, we have the kids perform, and then the kids go in and they beforehand make handmade cards that they pass out to the residents, and the residents love that. If the nursing home will let us bring treats, we bring in cookies or something. They all love that. And then I bring in my chimes, and we do some music making together. So with the residents and the students, and we get the students to mingle. And that sometimes is a hard thing, is mingling with an older person, learning how to go in. So I do prep the kids ahead of time. Here's what to expect. Here's some things you can ask this person. And it's meaningful. And that's actually one of my retention strategies too, is to provide community service opportunities, because we feel good when we're helping other people. And if you can show that the fact that you play an instrument brings joy to somebody else, that's a good feeling. And we stick around when we feel good. And if a teacher is providing those opportunities, we want to be involved in good things. And parents want their kids involved in good things and to pull themselves out of themselves and focus on what can you do for somebody else. But it shows value in that instrument, that beautiful music that you're learning, that somebody else appreciates that. So did I answer that?
I'm not even sure I remember what the question is anymore.
Okay, we were talking about performance
you said so many
opportunities.
things, you had to have answered my question.
Okay, it was performance.
Summer strategies, right? You touched briefly on doing those performances at the Bringing Smiles on tour. Is that what it was?
Yeah, Bringing Smiles. Yep.
Arianne and I have discussed on our podcast about how, the year has almost like a rhythm and a feel to it, and an ebb and a flow, and how the summer is such a contentious, it's so contentious for some teachers, right? Some teachers completely change the structure of their studio around, and like they try. So I know people that charge less for summer lessons because they are so. I don't know if desperate is too much, but they are so hell-bent on keeping students during that period. Do you have strategies other than the Bringing Smiles on tour that you feel like are things that people can do in the summer?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Actually, my studio policy is we are a year-round school, and I just lay that out. Okay, you are too. Okay, and so
is that the way it is for you too, Arianne?
Yeah.
Is it that way for you, Arianne?
Sorry, what was the question?
Are you a year-round studio? Do you treat summer differently?
Definitely. The only way in which we might treat summer differently is occasionally there'll be just more opportunities for workshops, things like that during the summer, even things like fiddle camps, because I'm also a violin teacher. So, but other than that, it's pretty much the same year round.
Yeah, because the kids have more time. The kids have more time in summer, and parents are often like looking for other things to put their children into, summer camps and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, what are some of those summer strategies, Mary?
Well, first of all, like what you guys do, it's just like we are a year-round studio. There aren't choices, and if you would like to continue to take from my studio, we attend year-round. And I abbreviate my schedule. I think I only do 8 classes during June through August. So I call that our summer, even though the kids are going into school a lot of times in August. But we're a year-round school, and so if I have offered all these cool opportunities the kids don't want to miss out on, they don't want to drop. They lose their spot. So they want to stay with our studio. So there's another reason why, just to provide these opportunities that nobody wants to leave your studio. First of all, they will do whatever it takes to stay. And we all know kids lose too much. If you go 2-3 months without a piano, you're playing catch up for 2-3 months. It's a waste of parents' money and time. And so I firmly believe in do something during the summer. I don't want to reinvent. I'm not a camp girl. Right. But that's a lot of work. But you know what? Some people, that's a great way to get new students in the door, and I'm all for it if that works for you. I'm at a spot. I'm in a good place, so I don't need to pull kids in. But camps are a great way of bringing new friends. Invite a friend and do a bucket drumming camp, or explore musical STEM. There's a lot of fun things that you can do with a camp. But our summer opportunities are the nursing home tours, and then I mentioned the Federation Ensemble Festival, and that is in October, early October for us. And so we're starting in June. We're starting on our ensemble festival pieces. So the kids have to learn 2 team pieces, and this is such a big deal in our studio with the kids getting on stage in their teams and getting their feedback and rating and points from the judges, that they don't want to give that one up too. So we call it teams. We straight up call it a team. And you're getting your ensemble pieces ready. And I have a few families that travel overseas, like they are gone the entire summer. But I'll do some makeup class options before they leave, some private lessons with some of my college girls. We've even done Zoom. So I'll do a Zoom lesson with you to keep you going if you really want to do that ensemble festival. So ensemble festival is a biggie. That's probably my biggie for keeping students in the summer. And other than the fact that they lose their spot. And we're pretty full. So it's hard to get into our school right now. And so they just know that they'll lose their spot. And so that's a
Right.
motivator too. And I don't want to be threatening. I just want to be like, hey, here's what you're
It's the
missing out
reality.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
That's
reality. I mean, people, they're like, because I have the same policy that you do, that if you're
good.
going to be gone for a month and you don't want to pay, well, then unfortunately, then, that spot, I need to fill it with someone else. And there's no
Yeah.
shortage of people looking to fill those,
Good.
so especially when someone's like, yeah, 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, and they're like, is this like a popular time, or do you think this will be here in 2.5 months? And it's like, no,
No.
absolutely not. Now, one of your talks was titled FOMO, fear of missing out, right? And that seems
Yeah.
to be a big theme of what you're doing, that you offer these opportunities, and also the group nature of your studio lends itself really well to having that feeling that others are relying on you, right? Others are relying on you, so you have to be there to support and contribute to your friends and your team.
Yeah.
And I saw you mention earlier that were you always a group only teacher?
You know what? No, I was private. I have been doing this about 20 years. So I started group before group was popular. I started group when I had to like totally sell myself, and when I lost 40% of my students when I converted.
Right.
This was 20 years ago. This was not a popular thing. But in Las Vegas and probably in a lot of other areas, I had a waiting list that was so long because we don't have enough teachers for the students that want to take. And I just felt bad all the time. Somebody's like, well, put me on your waiting list. And I was like, you'll never get in with me. There's just no way. And a friend, actually a piano parent mom, said, hey, my sister's doing this group piano thing. She's in Idaho. Take a look. And I looked at that and I went, oh, this is the answer. And this is how I can impact more students. I can get more students in my studio. And let's face it, the money is great. The
Right.
time involved is more. You just have to know that you're putting in more time. But I didn't do it for the money initially. I did it because I could impact more students, and so I could bring more students in the door. But 20 years ago, I had to sell that, and I had to bring parents in. I started out, of course, as a private teacher, like all of you. And when I realized I wanted to do those, I started those performance classes, which we talked about at the beginning.
Right.
And I just said the last lesson of every month, we're going to come in and we're going to do performance classes. And they would come in for an hour and a half. And we do some theory games, little improvisation, and they perform for each other. And I did that for about 6 months so parents could just see what is a group like. And so I can see too, do I like this? Is this something I can do? Is this something I enjoy doing? And I loved it. And I went, this is the way I need to go with my studio. And I'm just going to go for it. So we moved into a new house. Timing worked out beautiful. And I had a dining room where I could put 6 pianos or digital keyboards. And it's like, this is the time to do it. But yeah, I took a cut. I lost about 40% of my students because parents were like, group piano, we don't do that. I don't know what that is. That's not a thing. Thank heavens it's like a thing now. It's a popular thing. A lot of teachers are doing it. And there's a way, if you have space, you have a way of bringing in some type of a group opportunity. You don't need to convert all the way like what I did, but maybe you create an ensemble team or you go back and you do those performance classes, but there's ways of adding value to your studio or bringing in some more group opportunities and maybe making even some more money, because those are treasured opportunities if you've got the space for it and it's something that you want to do. But yeah, I've been doing this about 20 years. It's popular now. You don't have to sell parents on it. You just be like, this is what we do. And they're like, okay, let's try it.
Wow, that's really amazing and very encouraging for any of us who would like to try to get into group teaching, especially independently. As individual teachers, I have done group teaching before, but as an employee of a larger school. So when you mentioned that you're able to craft that environment in your home, I thought, oh, that didn't even register as a possibility for me. But that could be a really cool thing, because there's something about going to your piano teacher's home that makes the learning just feel so much more genuine, authentic. It's a sense of place. It's special. And I guess a follow-up question would be, nowadays, now that you've refined this practice of group teaching, and that is your thing, and something that a lot of other teachers are getting into, for you personally, I would ask, how much of the repertoire that you teach is ensemble repertoire versus solo, if there's any solo repertoire at all?
That is a great question. I would teach, ensembles are just part of our curriculum. So yes, I have a ton of solo curriculum, and I don't want to say that I teach a group class like I would teach a private, but I'm using the same material, if that makes sense. So I'm using a method book, and we're learning method book pieces. My older students, more advanced, are learning sonatinas. We're doing classical music. We're doing the same stuff I would do with a private student, because I believe, and there's repertoire that these kids need to learn. But it doesn't matter if it's a private situation or a group, but they need to learn these pieces. These are pieces that will build their skills, and they need to be introduced to the great classical music that's out there as well too. So what I do is I just take a method book piece or my solo pieces and I teach them in a group format. So there's techniques of teaching solo repertoire in a group. So just because you teach group classes doesn't mean you can only teach ensembles. Teaching ensembles is actually tricky. That takes a little more practice to teach, but that is part of it. We're looking at ensembles. I do buy a lot of, if there's repertoire, like solo repertoire that has teacher duets, I love it when teachers do that, because that already, you can take a beginning little song, C, D, E, and add a beautiful duet, and students are playing an ensemble even with you. You're creating that in your environment with just the teacher and the student. But then the student's starting to learn to listen already, because those skills, how important those skills are, those listening skills, just being able to play with somebody, because hopefully you hope your student, might end up in jazz band, or they might, you want them to be able to accompany a singer or a string player. And those are skills that you can do right there in your private class if you're playing with those duets, those accompaniments too. So I think those are super helpful. But yeah, I'm happy to share what I do, but it's it is a lot of solo repertoire that I just teach using group teaching techniques.
Good to know. Yeah, when I was in the master's program for piano pedagogy at Cal State Fullerton, they actually had the pedagogy students do an entire semester course on how to teach group lessons. But I think the focus was on how to teach group classes at maybe the community college level for students who wanted to maybe get some piano coursework in, or even recreational music making group classes. So I wasn't sure if it would be the same, but yeah, actually the focus of that class too was on teaching the same kinds of things that you would encounter just teaching a private student. So that's interesting that you do the same thing, and it's encouraging too, because if it were only ensemble repertoire, I feel like I would run out of repertoire so fast.
Well, and you're not making a well-rounded student, are we? So our goal, even though my kids are coming for 45 minutes and it's fun, I am very serious about what we're teaching. They're learning scales, they're learning classical music, we do music theory. We're doing everything that I would teach in a 30-minute private lesson, but it's in a group format, and they want to come back because it's fun, and we'll do it. Like today, I'm doing some rhythm skills, and we're going to do bucket drumming. And so we're going to learn rhythms, but we're going to do it with bucket drumming in classes too. So it's just different ways that you can bring in the same music theory, but approach it maybe a little more creatively, or just in a different way that resonates with learning styles too. So a lot of that is just, trial and error. You can do that in your classes too. Get a bucket and some drumsticks and you're good.
Nice.
We've talked before about how when you try something new, right? When you try something new, it can be intimidating, and you can feel like you have to dive entirely into that thing. But for group teaching, there's ways of approaching that, and I've done group workshops for 4 years, right? And it's such a big hit with parents on the phone when you tell them that, while other teachers, your child might get two performance opportunities, two workshops, two recitals a year. The fact that we have a monthly workshop gives them an additional 12. So going from 2 to 14 performance opportunities a year is just, the math is incredible. I was wondering if we could spend some time talking about your piano parent crash course, because I feel like a limited time opportunity for teachers that are listening with a potential student base that already exists might be a good way for them to dip their toes into teaching more than one student at a time.
Yeah. This came about like a couple years ago when I started to have parents come in and they they want to know, okay, what's this note and how many beats is that? And what's this letter? I'm trying to help my student at home. And I was like, these parents are so engaged. I need to respect that and celebrate that and help them out too. But I have a 5-minute window in between my classes. There's not a lot of time to go over that too. So this just popped into my head, and actually it's been so popular that I'm glad you asked about it. And I'm actually presenting a full session on this at our Group Illuminated conference that starts June 1st, sharing my actual lesson plans, templates to come up with your own course and marketing materials. But I went, what can I do to help out these parents? And I thought, they're interested in learning. They want to learn piano. And they kept saying, I don't know anything about piano. It's like, you can. And you know what? It's kind of incredible what you can do in 4 weeks. So this is a 4-week crash course for parents. So I advertised this with my studio. I said, come learn what your students are learning, learn these basics so you can help your child at home. And we parents want to help our children at home. We have this love for them that we want them to be successful. And that's what the parents do, right? We jump in and we're like, how can I help? And in the meantime, they're learning these basic skills themselves. And I'll just tell you what, after I run these courses, I always have a few parents that want to stay and do piano classes themselves. So that was not my intention at all, to teach adult classes, but I had enough say, this is fun. I want to do some more of this. And so that was a way for me to build up adult group classes later in the evenings when I couldn't teach. Not that I couldn't, but there's a time where it's too late for little kids to come for piano too. So I set up this 4-week crash course, and it's 45 minutes. Now I have a group studio. I have 8 pianos that I would have the parents come learn together. But if you're an individual teacher and you want to do this one-on-one, it still works. There's ways to make this one work. Or if you've got a couple of pianos, like Jacqueline, I see a couple of pianos there. You can have a couple of people at once, or you can have them sharing a piano too. So there are ways of making this one work where it doesn't have to be one-on-one. And that whole community interaction thing is golden for adults, if nothing more than just provides them another person to go, oh, they're struggling too, and to laugh with when something doesn't go right, and to not be like, oh, you're the teacher, you know all, and to have somebody else that's in their same place is kind of reassuring, I think too. So I basically started out with what if I only have 4 weeks, which is all I have with these parents, what would I want them to know to help their children? What are some of the most common questions or the things that I see from beginner parents as from beginner students when they come in? So my curriculum would talk a lot about keyboard geography. I would start out with that, or the letters on the keyboard, rhythms, basic rhythms, finger numbers. I bring a little bit of that one into bench position, a little bit of real basic technique, just, how to sit at the piano, where to sit at the piano, so that we don't have their kids up here with their little T-Rex arms at home. And the parents need to recognize that. I want them to recognize that as well. If there's time and you've got to just kind of go with the flow, see how the adult does it. I bring in a little bit of beginner staff note reading, maybe in C position, so they learn a few treble staff notes. And I jump into some chording just with fifths. White key fifths that make it easy so they can maybe do some lead sheet accompanying with their students, because I feel like chording is one of those things I didn't learn until I was way down the road. And I feel like that just makes you, the village musician, if you can play chords and read lead sheets and recognize chords sooner rather than later, that's super important. So if I have time, I'll bring that one in. But I would go with the flow of the class. But even if I did not get to staff note reading, I've considered that a success if they knew where keys were, where the letters were on the keyboard, and they could read basic rhythms, and then also playing an ensemble. So they need to understand. And that was funny because a lot of the parents would be like, oh, this is harder than I thought to play with you. And I can follow, right? So I can slow down if they slow down. But these kids, my group kids get recordings. They need to practice with the recordings. The recording doesn't slow down. So you're forced to keep going. And isn't that a performance skill that we want? All of us need to be able to just perform and keep going. You make a mistake, you keep going. And that, I feel like, is a life skill, because we have to keep going in all sorts of areas of our lives too. But the parents didn't realize how hard that was for their student to play with somebody else and to develop the skills. So it gives us a chance to talk about what's your student going through, and they're kind of a lot more empathetic because they're experiencing what their children are going through too. So yeah, that's been a cool thing. But that really just evolved from a few parents that were interested, and it's like, how can I reach out to these parents? It wasn't even like a money maker. It was just like, how can I help these parents? But I'll tell you what, I did not offer this for free, because parents want to help their child and they're willing to pay for it. I didn't charge a fortune because they're already paying me money for their students to be there. But it's my time, and I need to be, and teachers, you need to be rewarded for your time. And another thing, and I know you've got to be invested, and paying a little bit of money gets you invested. So if you do something for free, a parent might show up. They might not, oh, I got busy, I didn't come, I didn't pay anything, so I'm not going to show up. Well, that's your time, and there was a spot, and you had a spot saved for that person, and they didn't show up. So I think for your own sanity, you need to charge something, even if it's just bottom line.
It also increases our investment, right? Because if we're doing something for free, then we're not going to be as invested in it. So if we're being paid, for it, our time, we're going to do more, and we're going to feel like we are being more appreciated, right?
Yeah, and you're held accountable too, right? Because somebody's paying you. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, Jacqueline. Yeah, that's good on the teacher side as well, too. So you're worth something. Charge for this.
Right. Yeah.
Parents are happy to pay it. Yeah. And the fact that this helps retention too, but because parents now understand this is what my child feels like. This is what if this is what it feels like, we all should be a student of something, don't you think? Because we understand what it feels like to be a beginner at something. And these parents, every one of these parents that cared enough to come in and take this class, these are some of my best students, because now they're helping their kids. They know how to help their kids with practice. If nothing else, they know what it feels like to be a student and to come into a class and be accountable for your last week of practicing. How did you do? But I feel like that's a huge retention tool, because you're training parents to train their kids to be successful at home. And those are the golden families, right? That we all want to teach.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have 2 pianos there, and I have a digital behind the camera right now. If I wanted to start with this, what would be or another teacher in a position like me, maybe they have a grand and a digital piano. If they have 2 pianos, what would be the most basic version of this crash course that they could offer, right? Instead of maybe a group, it's a partner, 2 adults, two adults. It means that also means they only need 2 people to agree on a time.
Yeah, which is easy to do, right? And you can even do that in a half an hour. It might not even need to be 45 minutes. I do 45 minutes because that's a good time for my kids before they're like, I don't want to be here anymore. So they're like, oh, we're over, we're done. Oh, that's great. So 45 minutes works out good, but you do whatever time works for you. I personally think you need to sit down and figure out what's important for these kids to learn. Your philosophy, what you're teaching your beginners right there. Like I mentioned before, keyboard geography, I feel like that is like the basis. If a beginner knows their keyboard geography and their rhythms, they can really tackle so much. But sometimes I'll get transfer kids come in where they were taught by finger number first, but don't know where the letters are. And I just feel like if I can pull kids back and they know where all the D's are on the piano and all the G's are, that makes reading staff notes so much easier too. So that personally, that would be my approach. Like I mentioned, that's where I would start. But if there's a different philosophy, maybe you're a Suzuki teacher and you need to teach some of the basics, of the intro Suzuki courses. So my suggestion would be pick what you're already teaching in your private students. Pick a method that you believe in and you're comfortable teaching, and teach the highlights from that. That's what I would do. Don't make up something new. Teach what you're comfortable with, but decide where are the minimums that I need to get across in 4 weeks, or maybe you want to make it a 6-week course, whatever you think you can fit in that is going to make it impactful for your parent and for your student. But yeah, you don't need to reinvent something. Teach what you're comfortable teaching. I mean, I have plenty of recommendations, but yeah, I just feel like same thing back to that time issue, with, do we have time to learn a new method? Well, maybe not, but I'm comfortable with this. I really like this approach. Let me go with this. And the benefit is that's what the students play at home too. So it'll be familiar.
Right. Yeah.
To your parents when they say it. Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about a couple other things that you do that is particularly interesting. You've mentioned that you use older teenage students that perhaps they're a little bit further along than their younger counterparts, and you actually take them in and you use them as teaching assistants or mentors. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that works?
Yeah, first of all, in a group class of 8 5-year-olds, it's nuts. And so I need help.
Wow.
So I am
8 of
not,
them. Wow.
Yeah, I've got room for 8 digital pianos, so I can have up to 8 students in a class too. So yeah, I honestly don't know how, I do not know how public school teachers teach 28, 32. I'm just like, the whole idea is mind boggling too. But I'm not making this up. I cannot teach these little people classes, these large classes of 8 little people without an assistant. So these teaching assistants are a big part, a huge part of why I can teach it. If I didn't have them, I'd have to cut down to maybe 4 where I can manage it a little bit easier too. So they're absolutely needed in our studio, and it's a paid job. So I pay these students to come in and assist. So a lot of times I am their first job experience, and I encourage them to put this on your resume, put this on your scholarship. I am the one every year filling out college applications for these students and writing reference letters of these kids that have worked for me. But they're routine assistants, and I remind them. This is another going back to the value of what they're learning and teaching that this is valuable, what you're doing, that you can benefit other people, but here you can benefit yourself. It's a job. I tell them I can't just go outside the door and grab anybody off the street and bring them in to assist this class. It has to be somebody that knows rhythms, that can sight read, because a lot of times these kids, they need to have played long enough with me that they can play the teacher duets with the students as well. So those are extra pieces that they need to be able to jump in and play with me. They need to definitely be able to sight read whatever the class is learning too. So they can understand immediately if they can see a child that's, using the wrong finger numbers or the wrong counting. I have them kind of going around the room with me to be point out. So they're getting a little bit of individual attention. A lot of times, group teacher, you get used to just listening really good, and you can tell who's off and who needs help. But I'll have an assistant, and I kind of circling the room while we play. So they're doing kind of mini tutoring, and they need to be able to figure that out right away. Oh, this is what needs to be fixed right there. So they need to be really secure in their own skills. So yeah, I want to say teen assistants, but I've hired some kids as young as age 10 or 11 because they were capable.
Wow.
So yeah. And if they're capable and they're mature, and you got to be responsible, and you've got to have the parent willing to bring them in at a separate time to come teach their class too. But so it's not necessarily teens, because I have some teens that don't practice that would be horrible assistants, but I have some 11-year-olds that are awesome. And honestly, these younger kids, they want to please so bad, and they want this job so bad. Sometimes they're even better assistants than the teens too. So I'm just going to throw that one out there too. They've been some of my best ones, but yeah, they'll come in. Other things like I do a little ticket system. They'll pass out the tickets where the kids are saving up for prizes, passing out the pencils, distributing the hand sanitizer, wiping down the pianos, other things like that. That way I can talk to a parent and don't have to worry about some of those admin tasks as well. But basically they're tutors. So I would call them they're teaching assistants tutoring in the class.
Can we go back to the beginning? How did that start? How did you try and fail to teach a large group of children? And you're like, what do I
Yeah.
do here?
Yeah, I was like, this is crazy. I can't do this. And so I thought, okay, you know what? Then I'll only teach four. And you know what? Sometimes it just depends on the group. You could have, um, and I don't want to say they're good groups because I love the energy of a group. I love the energy of 8 little 6-year-old crazy boys because they're energetic and fun. And it's a fun energy for me too. But there does need to be some form of classroom control. And honestly, Jacqueline, I don't even remember how this came about. I have been hiring assistants for so long. I think I just got to a point where it's like, I can't do this myself. And and there was probably somebody that hired me. Maybe that's where I went to. And I was like, maybe one of my teachers hired me to help, or maybe one of my kids. I just thought this is a great opportunity for these kids to actually get job experience too.
Right. I
What?
remember I was a TA for the piano class in high school, and I felt like that was a big part of what pushed me to go towards piano teaching because
Oh,
I felt
nice.
like this is something that is interesting for me. In the
Yeah.
beginning, I was just kind of grading theory tests and whatnot, and then I remember that when she was out sick, the sub would just kind of sit on their phone, and I would be the one who was teaching the
Doing all the
class.
work.
Doing all the work, yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was teaching, and the sub was just getting paid to sit there. I'm sure that they didn't appreciate going to the next class without the TA, though, having to do their work. But it's fascinating because this is a retention strategy because as those students get older and they get more advanced and they have other opportunities in life, maybe they start dating, maybe they want to pick up a part-time job. Having this thing as an opportunity for them, I would imagine that it would push them to continue learning in their own studies and also be a reason I should stick around because, well, I'm being paid, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a job. It's a job. And you know, it's an automatic job. If you're responsible and you're keeping up with your practicing, I will hire you. And in all honesty, I have had a few parents come to me and say, Marie, the only reason why my 15-year-old is still with you is because they want that job and they want it bad.
Right.
And it's like whatever works, whatever keeps them playing. I have used it too, and I have never done this until this past year, but I had a few assistants that were not meeting their practice goals. And so I used it as a little form of time out. I don't know what you call that. I want to say
Out.
reprimand. I did, but I said, hey, if you're not continuing, well, first of all, I backed up. I said, hey, you're not having a lot of time to practice. I better give you a break from your job so you can find some time to
Oh,
practice.
that way. I thought
I
you
did.
assigned someone the job as time
No,
out. The other way
no, oh
around.
no,
Okay.
no, yeah. No, I said, so I gave him a little time out. I said, when you can start, yeah, getting current with your practice, then we'll bring you back in. And they want that. They want it bad. They're like, what? Because that is a stipulation. If you're an assistant, you are keeping current with your studies because what use are you in this class if you can't, sight read the music? If your skills aren't progressing, then you're not a help for me in this class. And so that's part of being an assistant is you need to stay current with your practicing.
I remember too, when I was a group teacher for 5 and 6 year olds a few years ago, um, that was a little bit earlier in my piano teaching career. And it was so instructive because occasionally you're going to come across students who may not learn certain concepts the way that you're used to teaching them. And because it's a group setting, there's a little bit more pressure on the teacher to think on their feet to figure out a solution. So I find that teaching, especially younger children in a group setting, but also older students as well, just really gave me as a teacher that creative edge and that ability to think on my feet to problem solve creatively.
Right, right. I know. We call ourselves magicians, right? Ariana's like, okay, what can I pull out of my hat, or how can I restructure this? What we're doing right now, how can I do it a different way? I'm obviously not reaching the script this way. What else can I do too? So yeah, you're really a performer, aren't you?
Yeah.
And group dynamics are so fascinating because in my workshops, I have my younger age group. I do 3 workshops. I do one for my adults, one for my older kids, and then I do one for the young kids. And there's a child in the younger group who is on the older side, and in her private lessons, she is fine. And then when she gets into the group, she becomes a bit of an instigator. And because she's on the older side, the other students look to her for cues on how they should act, and it presents a bit of a problem. So I have paired her up with younger students that come in with like a 5-year-old, because it's majority of like 7 to 10, 7 to 11, but there's this couple 6 and 5-year-olds. So I've paired up this older girl. She's 10, and I've given her the responsibility of watching after some of those younger students, making sure that they feel comfortable, helping them out with writing the words down. If there's an activity, then they don't maybe know how to spell. So it's so fascinating to see how in those group settings, you can take an opportunity to provide an educational opportunity to a student while also helping balance the class needs and that kind of stuff. We are going to be wrapping up here soon, but I wanted to talk lastly about technology with you, Marie, because so many teachers are so stuck in the past, right? So many teachers are so stuck in the past with the black and white composition, line paper, writing down the notes, and COVID was hard for so many. I remember seeing on the local Facebook page someone saying, I'm offering lessons over the phone for like $5. So like technology is like a big sticking point for a lot of teachers. But you've talked about how it's a big part of your retention strategy.
It's a huge part too. And I this is something I presented on a lot at MTNA, presenting again at Group Illuminated on technology. First of all, for teachers, this is going to save you time in the long run, with lesson planning, with being organized, with communication with parents. So I realized that there's a little bit of a learning curve to this, but the time that you're going to save by using some tech tools is going to be remarkable. It's actually going to turn you into a better teacher, maybe even a better person, because you're not spending so much time, handwriting this, but you're actually, you've saved some email templates, or maybe you've saved your lesson plans in Google Docs. So there's ways of using technology to save your time and make your time more productive too. But for my students, I feel like, first of all, these kids understand technology. They're used to it. It's something that is part of their lives. Maybe not something that was part of our lives growing up, but it's something definitely that they respond to. And why not? I guess my point is, why not? And if a teacher's nervous about it, start with 1 or 2 apps. Pick 1 or 2 apps that get some recommendations. Maybe you want to do a sight reading app or note naming, and you learn how to use it really well and try it with a couple students. And if it's fun and the kids like it and you feel comfortable with it, add another app. But you don't need to sit down and go, okay, fill up my phone with apps, the iPad. Here's all the things that everybody says is good. Pick 1 or 2 things and get comfortable with it yourself. I remember the first time when I hooked up my iPad to my big screen TV in class, because that's how I share technology in my classes, is on a big screen TV. And I practiced. I would go in early and I would practice, okay, here's how I do this. And I turn on my iPad and I do this. And soon it became second nature, and this is just what we do. But you do have to just get out of your comfort zone and do it. And then you are going to find there are just certain ways of reaching students that you cannot do face-to-face. But an app is going to make a huge difference in how that child learns. Or you get an app that has those levels like we talked about. Where do I go next? And they're like, music theory, I'll do it. I'll do more of this because I want to get to the next level. And then there's little you have to do. Your student becomes this awesome note reader or sight reader because of a couple apps that you have introduced to them, and they're a better musician. And you've saved yourself a whole lot of time, and you can dive into the really cool stuff, like the technique that they can't do that on an app. But if they can read their notes well or their chords, then you can start to incorporate that into your actual lesson time. So some people call that, what do they call it? It's not off-page learning, where you're learning, but or off-bench. Yeah. Just giving them something else that they can do at home that's going to build their skills until they see you next too. So, I mean, I've got a whole list of apps. We can talk technology anytime. But if that keeps them engaged and learning, and basically if a child is comfortable and they're progressing in class, then they stay around. If they're not progressing and they can't play their pieces, that's not a happy situation for the student, and they don't last. They're not going to stick around and be disappointed every week, and you're disappointed and they know you're disappointed too. So I really feel like anything technology you can bring in is going to inspire their learning. I mean, even YouTube. Just
Right.
get on YouTube and share a cool performance of like last week, we were talking about John Williams. Share an orchestra performance of John Williams playing, Star Wars theme. And like, this is our classical composer right now in the year 2024, John Williams. What does he look like? And that was a learning experience for them too. YouTube's awesome. I'd start with YouTube because there's so many cool things that you can
And
do.
they're all over YouTube. I mean, all the time, right? Kids
Right,
are on
yeah.
YouTube constantly. Do
Yeah.
you feel like there's a place where, well, let me start over. Have you heard of the app Flip?
No, I haven't.
Flip is a free app that I integrated to my studio. It is set up in a similar way to TikTok-ish, but it
Okay.
is a private group that educators can create and students can join. And then students can submit videos to different topics for different assignments. And they can also respond to one another with messages or videos.
Got
So
it.
my students have a Flip check-in assignment each week, and that means that they need to record a video. Sometimes it's about a music theory concept, sometimes it's a particularly challenging part of their piece, but they have to do that by the halfway point in the week. So like, for example, a student had a syncopated rhythm, and I asked that their lesson's on Tuesday, and that means by Friday they needed to submit that measure, that group of measures, so that I can give them a thumbs up or be like, hey, it's not quite right. And one of the wonderful things that I do with it is when a student really knows the theory concept, I have them create a tutorial video, which I then send to students that are going through that concept. So for example, someone is talking about how to identify major versus minor. And then if a student needs to remind you about how to identify major or minor, then instead of me sending a video, recording a video, that's my time. And also I'm the teacher, they can look at a video that their peer has created on the subject.
That's cool. Okay. That's really cool. I love that. I'll look that one up. I use Practice Space. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm a little
okay.
bit familiar with
Okay.
that.
That's similar.
Is there
where there's like
interaction
a
between
chat.
the kids on that?
Yeah, there is. You can set them up in groups so they can. I know that's another one of my retention strategies is putting them. They're in their group classes, but there's a chat where they can send videos like what you're suggesting back and forth. They can also send it privately to me. Although I encourage them to send it to the group because that is motivation. It's like, oh my gosh, my friend got this piece ready. I got to get this piece ready. So they can share that back and forth. That's also a way of just, encouraging and congratulating each other. I had a cute thing where one of the girls just got on the chat and said, what's your favorite color? And then she made us all these cute little bracelets with
that
our
is so
names.
cute.
And it was like totally out of the blue. That's like, and that's what I'm saying. This is like their friends. This is our group, their
Right.
team. But she used the chat to find out something more about her friends, and then she made them a little gift too. So I love Practice Space. I don't know if it's the same thing as Flip, but it sounds like it's a lot of the same where it's a
Yeah.
communication, but it's private, so it's not like out there for everybody to see, like on Facebook or Instagram or
Right.
anything like that. Yeah.
Cool. So at the end of each of our episodes, we typically try to come up with a big takeaway from
Okay.
our episode. So, Arianne, do you want to start with your big takeaway from this episode?
Sure. My big takeaway would be I really want to get back into group teaching. I actually have a studio office in Uptown Whittier that I teach at, and there's a vacant room right next to mine in the office building where I'm set up that is a lot larger than the room I'm currently in. So maybe I could inquire about setting up a few keyboards in there and reintroducing group into my regular teaching practice. Another thing that I would like to try is the 30-piece challenge, among many of the other things that were suggested here today. So thank you so much.
Yeah. I'll be sure and share links to that. Hey, I'm excited. Let's get something going.
Yeah. My big takeaway, I think, is that I do group workshops, and I've done group workshops for over 4 years now. And that is a form of group teaching that I've become very familiar with. But the the group teaching where it's, weekly group lessons is sounds like such a great opportunity for students to get to know one another, and the the crash course for the piano parents seems like a very approachable way to not only offer something extra this summer, but also dip my toes into trying to keep a group of students in the same general place in terms of what they know. And you've talked about how it's kind of self-regulating when there's that group, that there's motivation to not fall terribly far behind.
Yeah,
So I think
it's
that I'm going to try that.
cool. I call it, I know we talk about peer pressure is a bad thing, but in group piano, peer pressure is everything. It's a beautiful thing because kids don't want to fail their teams. They want to show up, practice. And so for the most part, kids will practice. Everybody has a hard week, but they don't want to fall behind. And if they hear somebody in class, I don't have to say a word. If somebody's got their piece ready and they don't quite, they go home and they get it ready too. There's that motivation to stay right up there with your team and not to let your team down too. And there are so many ways, like you said, Jacqueline, of starting group, but bringing in any type of offering into your private studio. I'm not here to say, hey, you need to totally convert to group,
Right.
but I feel like the benefits of any group interaction are just going to make your studio stronger. Your retention is going to be better, and you're going to be the sought after teacher because you're offering something that not everybody does too. But there's not one way of offering a group experience too. So the Group Illuminated Conference that I'm co-producing. This is our third year of doing it because we found that there was no conference for group piano teachers, and was like, we need to offer something because this is a thing. It's popular now. But not everybody, you'll see that people that sign up, some people are just exploring group. Some people have done it for 20 years, like I have. Other people are like, what offerings can I bring in and add that make my studio valuable or different, that set me apart? And so that's kind of where we've gone, is trying to bring in all of the options of ways that you could bring a group environment into your studio. But we've got the best of the best. So group teachers, they've got them talking a lot of marketing. I know you guys are big on business. I feel like that's something we teachers just do not get enough training on business.
Right.
So how to market your studio, how to bring, like I said, different ways of bringing group into a private studio already. Ways of converting. If you're ready to convert, that's your thing. There's ways of converting. Ways of working with different age groups. So we've talked about the Piano Parent Crash Course. Maybe you want to start with adults, like maybe Jacqueline's going to do, or maybe I only want to do preschools, but we're talking about, different levels of students that you could start out with, starting with just beginners, or how do I teach a group of, intermediate students too. But there's a lot of places where you can jump in and find your niche. Where does group fit into my studio too? So this is a group conference created by group teachers. We're all group teachers. This is nobody on the outside doing that. So I'll share a code to get $50 off. I'll share a link, but check out the presenter lineup. You can see it's not all group teaching techniques, but we're covering theory, actual technique in a group setting, marketing, a lot of those things. Just the role of parents. We talked a lot about that too. So a lot of the sessions are going to be the type of thing that can work somehow into a private studio offering as well.
Absolutely. So we'll be able to get that link to get $50 off of the Group Illuminated Conference happening in June. You can go to www.definedmusicteacher.com/blog and find the show notes for this episode where you'll be able to get that discount. So it was wonderful having you on the podcast today, Marie. You have so many fascinating ideas, and I'm sure that the people listening will have lots of thoughts after this episode.
Well, thanks for having me. You've been fun to talk with, Joe. Excited to see what happens in your groups, your private studios with groups. So let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Marie.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Piano Pedagogy Podcast, and we will see you again next time.